So we're heading into some of my very favorite weeks here on the homestead, and that's all about incubating and hatching those cute little baby chicks. And so what I'm doing now is working on gathering my eggs to then be incubated toward the end of the week. And I thought this would be a good topic to talk about because I feel like there's a lot of focus put on the incubation part, which is important, but not as much focus is put on the gathering of the eggs. So what eggs to be selecting, which eggs should not be incubated, how to store the eggs properly, and all of those details really are going to add up and contribute to either a successful or an unsuccessful hatch. So I've hatched hundreds of chicks in the past, so I'm hopeful that throughout all my experience, I'll be able to give you some great tips along the way. So I thought we would start in the coop. We have the chickens right back here. So I'll show you what I have going on in there, and we'll cover the 12 most common mistakes that I see people making when it comes to this step. Let's dive in. Hi everyone. How we doing? Did you lay some good eggs for me? So one thing I make sure to do when I'm actively collecting eggs for incubation is go out here frequently. I've already been out here twice this morning, so we'll see what we have this afternoon. So not too many so far. This one's still empty from this morning. This is a wooden egg. I like to keep wooden eggs in here to encourage laying. Let's see what this little honey has. You gonna let me get in here? Hi. Looks like we have 2 wooden eggs, but we do have 1 fresh one. So not too many yet this afternoon. Come on, you slackers. Let's pick up the pace. Oh, hang on. We have another one. Now this one that I found on the floor, we're probably not going to use for incubation, and I'll explain why once we get into the 12 common mistakes. Now that we're back inside, let's go ahead and tackle step 1, which is making sure that these eggs are fertile, right? There's no sense in incubating these eggs if nothing is going to happen. So this is a great thing to do the week before or 2 weeks before you plan to incubate, because we are going to have to crack these open. So you don't want to be cracking open your prize eggs that you plan to incubate. So let's go ahead and take a peek. So it's nothing too complicated. We're just going to crack an egg in this bowl and take a look for a bullseye. So let me zoom you in here. So I don't see one yet. It's probably on the other side of the yolk. So we're just going to gently turn it over until we see it. And here's a nice close-up view. Here you can see that perfect bullseye shape. So we have the ring around with the dot in between. This one is fertilized. Let's go ahead and do a second one to compare. And again, the bullseye is kind of hard to find, especially with these sad, pale winter yolks. We have had a lot of snow lately, so they have not been out foraging. There we go. Let's get a close-up look at that one. And this one has a really nice bullseye here. You can see it's well defined, so that's another great fertile egg. I'm hoping to find an unfertilized one for you guys. So I picked one that I think probably will be. They're from my Polish hens. My rooster just doesn't seem to like them quite as much. And yes, we have an unfertilized egg. Let's take a closer look. So here is a likely unfertilized egg. So it does have the kind of white pinhead sized dot, but I'm not seeing a bullseye around the edges, kind of like this one here. So this one is likely unfertilized. So to put this into practice, you don't have to do it super scientific, like crack open a whole bunch of eggs in one bowl and inspect every one. I just try to pay attention when I'm making breakfast every morning about a week before I plan to start collecting eggs, just kind of taking a mental note of how many are fertilized in the pan each morning. So it doesn't have to be this big ordeal, but just start paying attention to your fertility rates when you're getting close. So the second thing we want to be paying attention to is temperature of those eggs. You definitely don't want to be incubating any eggs that have been in your refrigerator. And if you live in a cold climate like I do in Minnesota, it's still pretty cold out. So if you're not getting out there to the coop, every hour or two to get them fresh, they could potentially get too chilled where they're not great candidates for incubation. So I love to use an IR gun to test the eggs when I'm out there in the coop to see where they're at. And so here are the 2 eggs that we pulled out of the coop. One is reading pretty chilly at 50 degrees where the other one is 70 plus. And what we're looking for incubating eggs is definitely nothing that gets colder than 40. 40 is kind of my cutoff range. I have done experiments on eggs down to about 38 degrees, and some of them did still hatch. So if they are really rare eggs and you just want to give it a go, it's worth a try, but you're better off making sure that the eggs never get below 40, 45 is kind of what I'm shooting for. Something else that can be really helpful is heating your nesting boxes. I'm not a big fan of heating the whole coop, but getting the nesting boxes a little bit warmer can really help with this, especially if you work all day and it's just harder to get out at the coop. And I actually have a video showing how I do that. I'll make sure to link it in the description so you can check it out. Mistake number 3 is picking eggs that don't have the right shape to them. You can see this one is nice and oblong and it has a clear cut, kind of narrower point here, where this one's really long and skinny. So these are ones we want to discard. Any ones that are long and skinny or maybe really fat and round and don't have your typical egg shape, because we want to allow for the normal development and filling out of a chick inside these eggs. So any ones that are long and skinny like this, I set aside. They're great for eating, but not great for incubating. Mistake number 4 is incubating any eggs with abnormalities. Do you kind of see this bump here, or this ridge in this egg? So this is one that likely the hen maybe got a little bit startled while she was developing the shell of this egg, and we have this ridge formation. Sometimes you'll see wrinkles happening as well, so these are just not very good candidates for incubation. Again, you can eat it just fine, just don't throw this one in the incubator. Mistake number 5 is incubating eggs that have thin shells or cracks. And often it's kind of hard to tell with the naked eye. So I like to do a tap test where I tap on the shell and it'll make a sound. And so, do you hear how kind of light and airy that is? That is a thin shell. Let me tap a regular egg so you can hear the difference. See, that is a deep, solid sound. Let's go back to the other one. So what's gonna happen when you incubate an egg with a thin shell is it's gonna lose moisture a whole lot faster than it should, and ultimately you could end up with the chick being shrink wrapped in here. So what that is what it sounds like. So it's gonna get really dry in there, the chick's gonna have a hard time moving, and basically just gonna get stuck or shrink wrapped and unable to hatch. The other thing I noticed about this egg is there are kind of these translucent light spots, and those are very thin areas. So we definitely don't want to use this egg. If you're not sure, you can illuminate them using a egg candler, and that'll really tell you what's going on inside. So let's go ahead and do that so we can take a peek. So here we go, let's match it up and we can kind of see really what's going on here. So you can see there's definitely a lot of spots in the eggshell, or these porous spots. I'm not seeing any cracks, which is good. This is definitely not a great egg for incubation. So I'm gonna grab a normal egg and we'll take a look at what it should look like. Now here is another one that felt very nice and solid to me, and look at that difference. So it's nearly solid. There is some light kind of modeling to it, but we're not getting those big porous holes that we were seeing like in that other egg. So this one's gonna be a great candidate for incubating. This is my egg candler. I absolutely love this thing. I've used quite a few in the past, and this is my favorite by far. You just plug it in, use it like a flashlight, and it has a really nice tip on the end to seal on the egg. If you just use a normal flashlight, you're not gonna get a good seal around the egg. So I love this thing. I'll link it in the description if you'd like to give one a try. Mistake number 6 is incubating dirty eggs, which is easier said than done, especially this time of year. It is mud season, so if I'm not out there all the time, those eggs are getting muddy quickly. And in fact, the one that I pulled out of the nesting box with you guys is indeed muddy. So this one's not too bad. It's just that one little part where the rest is clean. So I'd say this one is probably fine for incubating, but it's not my first choice. Now this is the mystery egg that we pulled off of the floor. I'm definitely not going to incubate it because A, it's a mystery egg. It could have been there from yesterday. Who knows? It was a little cold, not terribly, and it is a little bit spoiled and kind of scratched on the top. So I'm definitely not going to use this one, but it'll be a great breakfast. And then this one for sure is too spoiled. I would not incubate an egg like this. Now, if you are just stuck and all you have is muddy eggs and you want to give it a go, I would probably wash them first. I typically don't wash eggs for any reason, whether for eating or from incubating. I feel like that bloom coating is there for a reason. Mother Nature knows best. But in a case like this, the bacteria will absolutely thrive in an incubator. It's warm and humid, so bacteria is just really gonna multiply. So you could wash the egg. So the best way to wash an egg, if you find yourself in a position where you absolutely need to, is always wash the egg in water that is a little bit warmer than the egg itself, because otherwise if you wash it in cooler water, it's gonna push the bacteria and the poop inside the egg where we don't want it to be. Or warmer water, it's gonna pull the other direction. And then you'll wanna sanitize it. I'm not a huge fan of bleach, but that is the standard for cleaning eggs for incubation. So you're gonna add just a teaspoon of bleach into a quart of water and dip the egg in there for about 30 seconds and you should be good to go. Mistake number 7 is all about egg size. If you've had chickens for a while, you've probably experienced the little tiny fairy eggs or just smaller than normal eggs, all the way up to jumbo eggs, which are often double yolkers, sometimes triple yolkers. And I know it's probably tempting to throw them in the incubator just to see what would happen, and you certainly can, but I wouldn't expect much. The smaller than normal eggs will often hatch a small and weak chick that's just not gonna thrive very well, where the bigger than normal eggs can often result in chicks that have like unhealed navels and kind of soft bellies, and they could ultimately end up with some kind of bacterial diseases, so that's not great either. Now, if it does happen to be a double yolker, it probably won't hatch. I won't say never. Some people have successfully hatched twins essentially from a double yolker, but it rarely ever happens. So stick with the normal sized eggs if you want a successful and strong hatch. Now, mistake number 8 is kind of a gray area zone, but it's definitely something to pay attention to and something that I had to learn the hard way, and that's mixing different types of eggs, especially your smaller light colored ones and your larger dark colored ones. And the reason why that is I found that these darker ones tend to have really thick shelves, especially your Morans or your olive eggers for sure, where these have thinner shells. And so what that means is when you load them all in the incubator, you typically have just one incubation setting, meaning your temperature and your humidity, which is great for you and simple, but these different types of eggs actually require slightly different settings. Since these are gonna lose moisture a whole lot faster, they need a higher humidity than these ones with the big thick shells. And so what I have found when I just did a standard setting for humidity is that these little guys end up getting shrink wrapped because too much moisture leaves, where these guys can end up drowning in the egg because they can't lose enough humidity. So it doesn't mean that you can't hatch them together, and I do. You just really want to make sure that you're choosing a setting that's kind of a happy medium for both, or hatch them in different batches so you can really target proper humidity settings for the type of egg that you're hatching. So we've covered the 8 main things to be looking for when it comes to evaluating the eggs that you want to keep for incubation. And my last 4 key things to look at are related to storing those eggs, because it's rare that you're going to get all the eggs that you want to incubate in just one day. And so it's important to know the key steps for storing these eggs properly so that they are still good candidates for incubation once they're ready to go. So let's go ahead and jump into mistake number 9, which is using eggs that are too old. You definitely want to use pretty fresh eggs. They don't have to be just a day old, but anything up to 6 days old is a great candidate for incubation. There's really no difference between a day 1 egg and a day 6 eggs, but the ultimate cap is about day 10. That's when I move them out of my incubation list and they go on to the breakfast plate. And to keep track, I highly recommend adding the date on your eggs. You can use pencil, no big deal. That's not gonna affect the hatchability of these eggs. So I just have 4-1 written on all my eggs since we're starting this today. And then hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have lots and lots of eggs to choose from once I start incubating. Mistake number 10 is what I am doing at the moment, which is leaving them out in direct sunlight. Now, doing this for an hour is fine, but you definitely don't want to leave a bowl out, right next to a window. It's just gonna be too intense on the eggs, create temperature fluctuations and all of that. So egg cartons are great, leave them closed, and then where you keep that egg carton makes a difference as well. So I still wouldn't keep, an egg carton by this window. I'm gonna tuck this away in my office where there is no direct sunlight. Now, temperature makes a difference too for storing these. 55 degrees really is ideal. So if you have an environment like that where it holds a steady 55 degrees, please move it there. But if you're like me, where you don't necessarily have that type of an environment, that's okay. We can just leave it at room temperature and it'll still do pretty good. Mistake number 11 is not putting the eggs into the cartons properly. So I catch people doing this every once in a while. So what we're looking for, so the eggs have this pointy shape, so it's wider on the top and pointier on the bottom. You always want to do pointy side down into the cartons and also into the incubators when you load them in. And the reason why that is up on the top side of the egg, there's an air cell here. So there's an air pocket that's going to grow and grow as the chick grows, and ultimately the chick is going to break into that air sac to breathe for a little bit until it hatches. So we always want to make sure the chick is oriented properly. The other thing that helps is this is going to help make sure that the yolk is balanced inside the egg. So if you flip it the other way, the yolk is going to float up to this narrower spot, and the yolk could potentially stick to the side of the shell here, and the chick isn't going to be able to move very well. So always do pointy side down. And the last and final mistake is tilting these eggs or creating some movement. So you definitely don't want to just put this carton off to the side for a week and not think about it. If you've ever seen a broody hen at work, when she is incubating her own eggs, they do a lot of movement of the eggs, kind of rotating them around and nuzzling them around, and that is helpful. So that's going to help make sure that the contents of the egg, the yolk of the egg, is staying fluid and moving in the egg and not stuck to one side. And so what I like to do is just take an object under the egg carton and just leave it like this for 24 hours, and then the next day I come over and flip it to the other side. So you kind of have to bring it into your routine to remember to flip it and move it, but it's not too bad, and you're only doing it for about a week. And then lastly, for a bonus tip for you, if you are lucky enough to have that wonderful 55-degree temperature, make sure to bring these eggs gently up to room temperature before you put them in the incubator, because your incubator is 99.5 degrees, so you don't want to stick a cold egg right into a very warm incubator. So everything gradual is what we're looking for. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep collecting eggs throughout this week so that I can start incubating on Friday. The first week of April is perfect for me, not only weather-wise here in Minnesota, but then that means I get to have chicks hatching on my birthday, which is at the end of April. So it's gonna be super fun. If you are interested in learning more about the incubation process, or you want more tips from me, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys and what you're wanting to learn. Incubating and hatching chicks is one of my favorite things, so I'm more than happy to keep talking about it. Thanks again for being here. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one.